16 and a bit years, approaching 16 and a half years. Obvious first question, why now?
I just think it's the time is right for me to go. I have done a long stint, and I've got other competing interests that I think I need to give more energy to. I don't think I can do that and do the Legislative Council job as I should do. It's going to take more, these other interests are going to take more time, so I think it's fair to step down at this stage. And at the time when other MLCs are going out of office seemed the logical time for me to do it. So there'll be election from 5 members rather than 4. And yeah, I have enjoyed my term in Tynwald. Obviously, there have been some very good times and some not so good times, but you have that in every job and every walk of life. But I can honestly say that I have enjoyed most of the time in there. I've served with some excellent civil servants, and I've got on exceptionally well with a lot of my colleagues a lot of the time. And I've enjoyed the rapport that we built up over the years. Obviously, I came in 2001, and all the members that came in at that stage are now not any longer in Tynwald as well. And 2 that came in a by-election shortly after that aren't as well. So, if you like, the cohort that I politically grew up with have gone. There's a new set of politicians on the block now, and I wish them well for the future. But all in all, everything came together, and I've been thinking, it's not a snap decision, it's something I've been thinking about over several months, that now was the time for me to step down and pursue other things. And there are quite a few things on my bucket list that I'm not going to achieve when I'm sitting in Bucks Road.
What cast your mind back to 2001? I mean, you come from a family with considerable history in both the area, Glenfaber, and a long political background as well. What prompted you to first get involved and I know you were a commissioner, but throw your hat onto the national stage as it was in 2001?
Well, it's a funny situation, really. My father, my grandfather, my uncle were all MHKs, and having seen them in office, I thought it's something I would never want to do. And I was surprised myself when I made the decision to stand, but circumstances change. I was a local authority member at the time, and it was at the time of the proposed all-island Irish scheme, where everything was going to be pumped around from the whole of the island to one location for the sewage to be treated. And I just thought it was such a crazy scheme that I just didn't want to sit back and watch it happen. There were other things happening at the same time, and I thought at that time I was one side of 50, and the next general election I'd be the other side of 50 and really start a new career. It was a bit late in the day, so it was now or never, if you like. In 2001, I was only ever going to have one shot at it. If I got the thumbs down, I wouldn't stand again. But as I got elected in 2001, I served my time, if you like, in those first 5 years.
You topped the poll, obviously, 3 times, 2001, 2006, 2011, and it caused quite ripples at the time when you were first elected. Well, it was one of the shocks of the day, if I recall.
Well, there weren't many shocks around at that time, if you recall. I think there were only 4 or 5 changes at that time. But I think the political background that I had from my father, my grandfather, my uncle certainly stood me in good stead, because I knew I was letting myself in for, if you like. But as I said, I was only getting one shot, and as I did get in, then I did give it my best shot. And obviously, the rest is sort of history, if you like. But you go full circle as a politician, and I was like a lot of them at the moment, new kid on the block, and I was very fortunate to sit as a member of the Department of, as it was then, Health and Social Care, under Claire Christian when she was minister, and I certainly learnt a lot from sitting under her leadership at that time. And lo and behold, several years later, I would come back to be Minister of Health myself. But I certainly learned from the others round about me at that time, and she was a very good leader at that time, and I learned a lot from her.
Politicians are, and this isn't my quote, birds of passage. It's been said often before. You said there's been highs, there's been lows. I mean, you obviously are a very proud Manxman. What would you say has been one of the main highs that you reflect on looking back?
It's difficult to say. I was fortunate to be Minister of 3 different departments: education, transport as it was then, and then health. And I think I enjoyed all 3 roles. I worked with some excellent civil servants. I had excellent support from my PAs in those 3 departments as well. But I think the Department of Transport really was the one I enjoyed most, because I'm a practical sort of person. There were a lot of major capital schemes going on at the time, and I enjoyed being involved in that process, if you like. And I suppose, having come in thinking pumping sewerage all around the Isle of Man to one location was the wrong thing to be doing. It was quite gratifying to bring the regional strategy to Tynwald and get unanimous approval to change that policy to treating the sewerage as close to as possible in the future to the risings as possible, if you like. So that was gratifying. But also, when I was in transport, we had some major capital schemes. The runway safety extension was one of them. That was a major scheme. It had its problems, as all major schemes do. But I was very fortunate to work with a good team of people, and a lot of these investments, I think, are investments in our infrastructure that we'll look back in years to come and say, it's a good job we did that when we had the finance to do it.
You had education, you had transport, you had health, as you say. You obviously, with your area, was Glenfaber, most rural constituency, and agriculture very much at the heart of it, and you had a big interest there. And it's something that remains close to your heart. Have the governments of the day done enough to support the industry?
It's always very difficult for any government to give support to an area of the island that maybe doesn't make a huge contribution as far as GDP is concerned, but has a massive impact in other ways. And it's been very difficult, I think, for past governments to balance that against the other competing areas for attention. I think they're moving in the right direction at the moment with the new setup to do with the meat plant. It's taken a long time to get this far, but hopefully that will give some resolution to the problems they've had. I think the dairy industry is on a sound footing. Obviously, the whole area of agriculture and how it plays its part has changed massively in the last couple of decades. We see fewer farmers working harder, bigger outfits, generally speaking, and then others maybe doing their farming at weekends. So the farming pattern has changed significantly. But I think as what has been recognised by the wider Manx public now is the contribution it makes to the Isle of Man being a great place to live and work. And I think
sound like the government PR spokesman then.
But I think that message is finally got home, that the agriculturists aren't just here to provide food, but to provide an environment that we're all comfortable to live and work in.
Tell me, we have got a wonderful countryside. We've got a good standard of education. We hope a relatively safe environment to bring up a family. But is it getting harder to maintain that quality of life?
Well, it is, because the world is becoming such a smaller place, and accessibility and problems are easy to pass from one jurisdiction to another. And we're not immune from the problems the UK have. and you know, we have to constantly be guarding against what we take for granted, I guess. So there will continue to be these challenges, and I seriously do wish the government of today well in coping with those challenges, at the same time trying to balance our finances as well.
You mentioned there about the government of the day and the changing makeup of Parliament. You were keen, in fact I think you brought it through, Tim, for Glen Faber to be amalgamated with Peel. And at one stage as a 2-seat constituency, and it has been now. Do you, how important was that to get what you felt was, well, what had been an unsustainable, unfair representation in certain areas?
Well, I think what was unfair on the voter of the Isle of Man, that some had 1 representative and some had 3, and going to a place where we had equality, when everybody had 2 representatives, I thought was a compromise that was acceptable to the majority of people. So everybody has equality of representation. Quite honestly, to be sort of honest, I suppose a lot of people would have wanted a single-seat constituent, 24 single-seat constituents, but we had to come to a compromise, and I think 12 2 constituencies was the compromise which I think most people now have accepted is correct.
From boundary changes to the debate over legislative council, I mean, it's not a new one. It's probably been going on since your father was involved. What is your stance on that now you've seen it from both sides?
Well, I guess on this one I've sort of gone full circle, thinking at one stage that the status quo was the best solution, and then realising maybe it would be better if the Legislative Council were elected by the people. And having said that, that would also create its own problems and tensions between the two branches.
There's nothing wrong with the upper house. It's that I mean, isn't it? Some members of the Keys of the day have abused it or used it for the wrong reasons. I mean, it used to be the home of the elder statesman or woman to serve the final chapter in their political life. Now, in some cases, it's that. But aren't the elected members to blame for that? They're the only ones who can elect members up to the chamber.
Indeed, they are. But I think the problem was the credibility of the Legislative Council maybe came into question, because there are people that maybe were in the Keys that should have gone up to the council and brought that experience, let that experience go up to the council. That didn't happen. Certain members said, well, I'm a Keys person, I'm not a Legislative Council person, I don't want to do that, I don't want to perform that role. And then you had a sort of a vacuum, and people came in from the outside that didn't have maybe the same understanding of the role of Keys and the relation to the Legislative Council.
Is it key that you need that understanding, though, or people bring different skill sets from different walks of life?
Well, the role is certainly changing. We have an element now, a strong element of scrutiny in the Legislative Council. Having said that, some of the people that have come in from the outside have made a significant contribution to the Legislative Council.
For the
better? Indeed. Not all, but a significant number have come in, and I think have made a very positive contribution. Having said that, I do believe the ideal would be to find a solution where you can have Legislative Council members directly elected, but with a different set of responsibilities. Now, I realise then there's going to be a tension between the Keys and the Council, and
over who has the most
mandates. Yes, but I mean, I've come round to thinking that would be the ideal situation, but I realise I can't see it happening now. But I'd be more comfortable personally being elected by the population outside rather than the population of the House of Keys. We talked about schemes and work that you're proud of. Obviously, there've been lows as well, as you've acknowledged. I mean, I think you've said in the past we need to build on our success and learn from our mistakes. So what have your mistakes been? Oh, how long have you got? I think you have to focus not just on your role, but the roles of people round about you. And sometimes maybe I was guilty of maybe not questioning enough maybe certain areas of policies.
Civil servants.
In some cases, but generally speaking, I'd been well served by the civil servants I've worked with. But it's up to us as politicians to question sometimes actions and policies. And maybe in the hustle and bustle and pressure you're under, sometimes you don't do that scrutinising, but maybe as well as you should do. However, having said that, sometimes you can spend too long navel gazing and not getting on with the job you've been given to do. Having said that, again, I think the changing role of the Legislative Council now is when they do scrutinise more. The role has changed significantly. They've got 4 now scrutiny committees that scrutinise government policy and see how the delivery of those policies have gone. It's a different role from actually doing rolling your sleeves up and getting on and doing something. I'm one of those people that rather get on with a job and do something, maybe live with the consequences, rather than scrutinising other people's jobs, if you like.
Well, tell me, you've been scrutinised, of course you have. Was there been a particular low moment where you felt the criticism you had, well, you felt wounded by it?
Well, there are always times when you feel misrepresented, I think probably is the best way to put it. And sometimes it's been in the media, the written media, I can say. And sometimes You
haven't seen how I've edited this yet.
Exactly. Yeah, sometimes maybe I have been guilty of not correcting things that aren't accurately reported. And I'm not a social media person either, so I don't pick up on social media, and things are out there. And once a hair starts running, it's unless you deal with it, it can develop into something that it isn't at all.
Health minister, you were health minister, obviously for I think 3 years, 2.5 years.
Slightly longer than that, I think. I was health minister in the previous administration.
Of course you were before, yeah.
Then I carried
on after the 2011 election.
in Alan Bell's administration until the reshuffle.
Now tell me, there was, I don't know, about 4 or 5 months before the reshuffle, a vote of no confidence by Lawrence Skelly. It failed. He raised concerns about the health service, but he was unsuccessful in his bid to remove you as the health minister. There was criticism from Kate Beecroft. Oh, the irony. Do you often look back at some of the recent failings that they both have been involved with, and the recent criticism of them on a wider scale, it must be said, that you were getting at the time, and think, well, what do you think? Well, or do you not take that approach at all?
No, I think it's the role of the health minister is a very, very difficult one, and I have sympathy with anybody that has been in that position, because you're in a no-win situation. You have limited finances, and public expectation is so high now in that area, and we're constantly benchmarking ourselves against services delivered, rightly so, in the UK. And we expect that the same services can be delivered in the same way on the island, which isn't in a lot of cases it's not practical or financially possible. So I have sympathy with the people that have sat in the health minister's chair. It's a very difficult one to sit comfortably in and think, are we doing as much as we can with the money that we've got? I think a lot has changed since the time I was in that chair, so it would be unfair for me to give direct comparisons about.
It's only a few years ago.
It is the budget. Obviously, at the time, we were following the 2008 financial problems. We couldn't overspend, and yet there was a strong expectation from some of my colleagues that we weren't delivering all the services that we should. But we had to keep it within the budget.
You maintained a dignity at that time. Was it hurtful?
Obviously, it is hurtful, and as one or two people that were involved in the vote of confidence said to me, it wasn't a personal thing. It was more to do with the health services we had it and the expectations they had for the health service for the future. So I'm sure it wasn't meant to be hurtful, but obviously you take these things personally sometimes, you know.
There have been issues, and one of them is the ongoing abortion debate, the reforms at the moment, of which your stance has been well documented over many years. Has it gone full circle now, in the sense of, are those who perhaps take a faith-based standpoint like yourself become targets of abuse? Has it gone from one extreme to the other?
Well, I think it has, and that's happened in different stratas of life on the island, really. If you have a position, you're not necessarily respected for that position because somebody thinks you're against a majority. And sometimes I think there's actually a majority that's quite silent out there on these issues. And the people that make the most noise get their way. And I think in this particular area that you're talking about is, you know, we as politicians are meant to stand up for the most vulnerable in our society. And here we have the most vulnerable in our society in this situation don't have a voice.
Are we undermining traditional views which have moulded the country, or are we moving with the times?
A bit of both, I think. We are moving with the times that are round about us, but I think the legislation that was in place was a model that others looked enviously at us, particularly from the Irish side. I think they think we had a model that was sustainable, that was fair, and give the unborn baby some protection. I'm very worried about the changes, but I'm hopeful that maybe some amendments during the closer stages to this bill might put some further protection in for unborn children.
Just let me ask you finally, you're going to miss elements of this, aren't you, clearly? And there's elements you're not going to miss. If you were starting out again now, would you still do the same? Would you go for it again?
Well, as I said to you at the beginning, I was only ever going to give it one shot, and if I didn't get in, history would have been different. But I think you have to do what you think is best at the time, and I thought it was the best thing for me at the time. I've given it my best shot, and sometimes maybe my best wasn't good enough, and other times you're more satisfied with what you've achieved. But all in all, I can walk away from Tynwald saying I think I've done my bit, and I wish Tynwald well for the future, and this government well in continuing to look after the needs of the people of the Isle of Man and to continue to make it a safe place to live and work.
If I can just say one more question. You've represented the island at the Commonwealth Games. You've obviously you've got a long history. But tell me, is there anything quite as proud as representing the Manx people, knowing you've been put there by the public?
No, I guess there isn't. And, I think the test is on being re-elected by those people when you've had to make those tough decisions. So, I mean, I'm proud of, of representing those people since 2001. I haven't obviously being everything to everybody, but you can never be that as a politician. You have to make difficult decisions, and you know, some of those difficult decisions come back to bite you, if you like.